Hello guys, welcome to my channel. The less is more. So today we will discuss an editorial from the Hindu only, right? As we were discussing many editorials from Indian Express, but I thought today let me take another newspaper, that is the Hindu, and today's topic is Indian space, right? And the title of an editorial is A Ground View of the Indian Space Policy 2023. Let's start editorial. On April 20 this year, that is 2023, the ISRO released Indian Space Policy 2023 that had been in the works for some years. The document has been received positively by industry. However, it needs to be followed up with suitable legislation, accompanied by clear rules, regulations. Just preceding this writer wrote the article awaiting liftoff into the second space age, April 10, 2023, which said that India's modest entry into the first space age, followed by its many gains, should be used to help the country tap the vast potential in the second space age. Okay, so waiting liftoff into the second space age. It said that India's modest entry into the first space age, followed by its many gains, should be used to help the country to tap the potential in the second space age. Until the early 1990s, India's space industry and space economy were defined by ISRO. Until 1990s, India's space industry and space economy were defined by ISRO. Private sector involvement was limited to building to ISRO designs and specifications. So, see guys, here in the first paragraph, the author has given us introduction. In introduction, what he has wrote is that ISRO has released this policy. It received positive feedback, but there is need for suitable legislation and clear rules and regulation. Okay, so in the introduction itself, we can see that there is a need for, the author has shown that it would be talking about the need to be followed up, right? That is suitable legislation and rules, right? And some way forward, like the gains should be used to help the country to tap the vast potential in the second space age, right? Now in the second para, it has shown some historical backgrounds, like in 1990s ISRO used to define this industry and space economy. Private sector was limited, right? The second space age began with licensing of private TV channels, explosive growth of internet, mobile telephony, and the emergence of the smartphone. Today, while ISRO's budget is approximately $1.6 billion, India's space economy is over $9.6 billion. What is the historical background? Then current status. So, by showing some historical background and current status, it gives impetus, it shows some importance, right, of the topic. India space economy, broadband, OTT and 5G promise what? Double digit annual growth in satellite based services. It is estimated that with an enabling environment, the Indian space industry could grow to $60 billion by 2030. See, this is how the writer has shown the importance of Indian space, right? Space economy. That is, by 2030, it would reach $60 billion. Yet it is the enabling policy environment that has proved elusive. Right. The first satellite communication policy was introduced in 1997 with the guidelines for FDI in the satellite industry that were further liberalized but never generated much enthusiasm. So, in 1997, first satellite communication policy was introduced and the guidelines for FDI. Today, more than half the transponders beaming TV signals into Indian homes are hosted by foreign satellites, resulting in an annual outflow of over $500 million. So, the using of foreign satellites for beaming TV signals through transponders, so that our private companies pays out to foreign entities, right? A remote sensing data policy was introduced in 2001, which was amended in 2011. In 2016, it was replaced by a national geospatial policy that has been further liberalized in 2022. Yet Indian users, including the security and defense agencies, spend nearly $1 billion annually to procure Earth observation data, imagery from foreign sources. Right. We have introduced remote sensing data policy in 2011-16, and which was replaced by national geospatial policy. Yet Indian users do what? Including the security and defense agencies, spend nearly $0.5 billion. To streamline matters, a draft space activities bill was brought out in 2017. To streamline these matters, a draft space activities bill brought out in 2017, which went through a long consultative process. Space activities bill. It lapsed in 2019 with the outgoing Lok Sabha. The government was expected to introduce a new bill by 2021, but it appears to have contented itself with the new policy statement. Okay, so earlier government has brought the space activities bill, but it was lapsed, right? So now government appears to have contented itself with the new policy statement. What is different? To be fair, the Indian Space Policy 2023 is qualitatively different from previous efforts. It is a short 11-page document which includes 3 pages devoted to definition and abbreviations. The vision is to enable, encourage and develop a flourishing commercial presence. Commercial presence in space. What is vision? Commercial presence in space. That suggests an acceptance that the private sector is what acceptance it suggests. Private sector is a critical stakeholder in the entire value chain of the space economy. It makes 5 key points. 5 key points. It defines its role in India's socio-economic development and security. What are these 5 key points? Socio-economic development and security. The role of this policy in socio-economic development and security. Protection of environment and lives. This is the second point. Protection of what? Environment and lives. Pursuing peaceful exploration of outer space. stimulation of public awareness, and scientific quest. These are these 5 points. Okay, 5 key points. Then first is these five. First, this is the only reference to security in the document. So what is different? The first difference is only reference to security in this document, making it clear that the focus is on civilian and peaceful applications. Considering that space-based intelligence, reconnaissance, surveillance, communication, positioning and navigation capabilities are increasingly seen as mission critical by the defense services, that India conducted a successful anti-satellite direct ascent test in March 2019. Okay. So these kind of missions are critical by the defense services, that India conducted a successful ASAT anti-satellite test direct ascent test in 2019, and in the same year set up what? Defense Space Agency and the Defense Space Research Organization. It is reasonable to infer that a defense-oriented space security policy document, defense-oriented space security policy document will be a what? Separate document. So, considering the space-based intelligence, surveillance, communication, positioning, and navigation capabilities are increasingly what? Seen as mission critical by whom? Defense services. And India also conducted a successful anti-satellite test. Okay, in the same year it has established defense space agencies. Okay, then defense space research organization. So these are some facts that substantiate that defense services, okay, defense security services which are imperative for India, right? So in this so considering these aspects, there will be a defense oriented space security policy, and it would be a separate document which is not included in this policy of space policy of 2023. So author says that it seems for civilian and peaceful applications. Okay. The United States (US) puts out a space policy under the aegis of White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, NASA, and the Department of Commerce and Transportation, while the Department of Defense and the Director of National Intelligence are responsible for the space security strategy. So, like the US, who puts what? A space policy under the aegis of White House Science and Technology Policy, NASA, and Department of Commerce. This is for civilian and peaceful application. But Department of Defense and Director of National Intelligence are responsible for space security strategy. Okay. So we are going on the lines of US. Okay. Second, the policy lays out what? A strategy and then spells out the roles of Department of lays out strategy. What is different? The first difference is there will be a separate document for security purpose, defense oriented space security policy. The second is the policy lays out strategy and then spells out the roles of whom? Department of Space, ISRO, in space, set up in 2020, and the New Space India Limited, a public sector unit set up in 2019, under whom Department of Space as commercial arm of ISRO to replace the now defunct Antrix. So second, what this policy suggests, what is difference in this policy? Lays out strategy and the roles of department of space, in space, NSIL. Okay. Third difference is, it states that ISRO will transition out of the existing practice of being present in the manufacturing of operational space systems. Right. So ISRO will transition out of its existing practice of being present in the manufacturing of operational space systems. Hereafter, mature systems shall be transferred to industries for commercial exploitation. ISRO shall focus on R&D in advanced technology, proving newer systems and realization of space objects for meeting national prerogatives. So, ISRO shall focus on R&D in advanced technology, proving newer system and realization of space objects for what? National prerogatives. Another of ISRO's tasks in the new policy is to share technologies. So, third difference is on the role of ISRO or the functions of ISRO. It will transition out of its existing manufacturing systems, and it will share technologies, products, processes, and best practices with non-government entities and government companies. This implies what? That ISRO will now use its biggest asset, its qualified and talented manpower, to concentrate on cutting edge research and development and long term projects such as Chandrayaan and Gaganyaan. So it suggests what? Implies what? That ISRO will now use biggest asset, what? The qualified and talented manpower, to concentrate on what? Cutting edge research and development and long term projects such as Chandrayaan and Gaganyaan. As ISRO's commercial arm, NSIL will become what? The interface for interacting with industry. NSIL will become what? Interface for interacting with industry, undertake commercial negotiations, and provide hand-holding support. It will undertake commercial negotiation, interact with industry, and provide hand-holding support to ensure smooth and efficient transfer of technologies. Fourth, what? Private sector role. The NGEs, that is the non-government entities, includes what? The private sector, are allowed to undertake what? End-to-end activities in the space sector through establishment and operation of space objects, ground-based assets, and related services such as communication, remote sensing, navigation, etc. So, private sector allowed to undertake end-to-end activities in the space sector through what? Establishment, operation of space objects, ground-based assets, and related services such as communication, remote sensing, navigation, etc. Satellites could be cell phone, procured, or leased. Satellites could be what? Cell phone, procured, or leased. Communication services could be over India or outside. Remote sensing data could be disseminated in India or abroad. NGEs can design and operate what? Launch vehicles for space transportation and establish their own infrastructure. So satellites can be cell phone, procure, lease, communication services could be over India or outside. Remote sensing data could be disseminated in India or abroad. NGs can design and operate launch vehicles for space transportation, as we have seen in this Elon Musk SpaceX. NGs can now make filings with International Telecommunication Union and engage in commercial recovery of asteroid resources. Now a company can recover asteroid resources. In short, the entire gamut of space activities is now open to private sector. Security agencies can task NGEs for procuring tailor-made solutions to address specific requirements. Security agencies do what? Task NGEs for procuring tailor-made solutions to address specific requirements. The activities of the NGEs will be in keeping with guidelines and regulations to be issued by INSPACE. The activities of the non-government entities will be in keeping with guidelines and regulations to be issued by INSPACE. It is expected to act as the single window agency for authorizing space activities by government entities and NGEs in keeping with safety, security, international obligations and overall national interests. It will keep safety, security, international obligation and overall national interest in mind. Finally, INSPACE is expected to create a stable and predictable regulatory framework that will ensure a level playing field for the NGEs. It will act as a promoter by setting up industry clusters. Stable and predictable regulatory framework which will ensure a level playing field for the NGEs. It will act as a promoter by setting up industry clusters and as the regulator issue guidelines on the liability issue. So it will function as in a different role, like promoter by setting up industry cluster and regulator issue guidelines on liability issue. The gaps. The policy sets out an ambitious role for INSPACE but provides no time frame for the necessary steps ahead. So policies provide what? Ambitious role for INSPACE. Neither is there an indicative timeline for ISRO's transitioning out of its current practices, nor is there a schedule ISRO's transition out timeline, nor a schedule for INSPACE to create the regulatory framework. The policy framework envisaged will need what? Clear rules and regulations pertaining to FDI and licensing, government procurement to sustain the new space startups, clear rules pertaining to FDI licensing, government procurement to sustain the new space startups, liability in case of violation, and appellate framework for dispute settlement. So there is a need for clear rules on about FDI and licensing. Okay, let me highlight it in green. FDI licensing, okay, government procurement, 2. New startups, liability in case of violations, and appellate framework for dispute settlement. Right. Violations, startups, FDI, and licensing. A regulatory body needs what? Legislative authority. The Reserve Bank of India was set up by the 1934 RBI Act, the Security and Exchange Board of India Act by the 1992 SEBI Act, and the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India by the 1997 TRI Act. So, on the same line, INSPACey is expected to authorize space activities for all, whom? Government and non-government entities. Currently, its position is ambiguous as it functions under the purview of the Department of Space. The Secretary is also chairman of ISRO, the government entity to be regulated by INSPACey. So, the secretary is whom? Chairman of ISRO, and ISRO is what? The would be regulated by INSPACey. The space policy. So, while concluding, the author is saying that the space policy 2023 is a forward-looking document reflecting good intention and a vision. But it is not enough. What is urgently needed is a time frame to provide the necessary legal framework to translate this vision into reality to successfully launch India into the second space age. So this is a good conclusion that you can use in any kind of policy questions, like we have topic in the mains is policy interventions. So while addressing these challenges and suggesting way forward, right, you can write in the conclusion that it's a forward looking policy with good intention and vision, but what is the need is a time frame to provide necessary legal framework and translate this vision into reality and successfully launch India into the second space age. Okay, so this was all for today. We have seen in this editorial the differences from that security activities bill which was brought in the Lok Sabha but lapsed in 2017, and the new policy, India Space Policy 2023. So author has suggested 4 different differences, and it has also shown that what is the gap in this and suggested a way forward. Okay, so this was a good article to be looked upon. I also again I request you all to read through this article. It is in today's newspaper 11th May. Okay, so it has suggested the question can be what is the difference between the previous and the new policy, suggest also mention challenges and suggest way forward. Okay, guys, so thank you. This is for all today. Bye bye, signing off for the day.